The Chiefs' running back situation is a bit uncertain right now. With Isaiah Pacheco on injured reserve and Kareem Hunt not ready to play yet, it opens the door for an undrafted rookie to get his moment in the spotlight during Sunday Night Football in Atlanta. There's a lot to break down, so let's dive into the matchup between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Atlanta Falcons. This Sunday, the Chiefs will take on the Falcons in prime time. Despite being on the road, the Chiefs are favored by 3.5 points. The Falcons are coming off a thrilling Monday night victory over the Eagles, but there's an important stat to keep in mind. Kirk Cousins, their quarterback, has struggled in primetime games throughout his career. Even after the win, his record in these games is 13-20. On the other hand, Patrick Mahomes is a beast in September, boasting a record of 17-4 since becoming the Chiefs' starter. This makes Kansas City the top-ranked team in the NFL power rankings, while I personally have the Falcons ranked 18th. Although they moved up after beating the Eagles, they are still a team the Chiefs can't afford to overlook. The Chiefs will need to play a clean game to secure a win. They can't afford a repeat of last week, where they had 3 turnovers yet still came away with a victory. That kind of win is rare, and here's how rare. Taylor Witt shared a mind-blowing stat. Since 1991, 151 teams have lost when they recorded fewer than 300 offensive yards, allowed 21 or more points on defense, had at least 3 turnovers, and converted 15% or fewer of their third down attempts. The only team to win under those circumstances? The Kansas City Chiefs last Sunday. It's pretty wild and almost funny when you think about it, but it shows that as long as you keep fighting until the end, anything can happen. A key play that swung the game for the Chiefs last week was the defense's scoop and score off Joe Burrow. If the defense can come up with a big play like that this Sunday and the offense limits its turnovers, the game won't be as close. Of course, as Chiefs fans know, it's probably going to come down to the wire, just like so many games do, a nail-biting 3-point finish or a one-score game. Now let's talk about the Falcons. This isn't the same Falcons team we've seen in the past. They've got a lot of playmakers on both sides of the ball. They've also brought in a new head coach, Raheem Morris, who used to be the Rams' defensive coordinator. Morris is highly respected, and he didn't come alone. He brought 2 guys from the Rams with him, Zach Robinson, who's calling plays for the first time as offensive coordinator, and was the QB coach and passing game coordinator for LA last year. The Falcons have added some impressive talent to their coaching staff as well. Former Rams assistant head coach Jimmy Lake is now the Falcons' defensive coordinator. With strong leadership on the defensive side of the ball and a fresh offensive play caller, this team is shaping up to be a product of the Sean McVay coaching tree. But let's be real for a second. Through 2 games, the Falcons could easily be 0-2. In their game against the Eagles, it took a costly drop by Saquon Barkley on third down that could have sealed the game. The Eagles had a 97% chance of winning at that point, but credit to Kirk Cousins, who led an impressive 2-minute drill. He repeatedly targeted the Eagles' rookie defensive back, helping the Falcons march down the field and score the game-winning touchdown. The problem for the Eagles was that they got absolutely no pressure on Cousins. Their secondary is also one of the weakest in the league, having allowed the 6th most passing yards this season. That's where I think the Chiefs will have an advantage. I expect Kansas City's defensive line to put more pressure on Cousins than the Eagles did, and much of that will come down to defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo. He's known for drawing up some wild schemes to bring pressure, but we'll get into more on him later. Now, while the Falcons have some solid players along their offensive line, they currently have the 5th worst pass blocking grade of any team, according to Pro Football Focus, PFF. Surprisingly, Chris Lindstrom, the highest paid right guard in football, has been their weakest link. This could open the door for a huge game from Chris Jones, who will need to exploit that vulnerability. Given that Cousins is less mobile than the quarterbacks the Chiefs have faced recently, like Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow, I believe Jones has a real chance to make an impact, especially with Cousins still recovering from last year's Achilles injury. One thing that does make me nervous, though, is the Chiefs' defense against tight ends. This season, they've allowed 25 catches for 276 yards and a touchdown to tight ends, and Atlanta happens to have Kyle Pitts, one of the best in the league. Pitts is a solid player, averaging almost 700 yards a season, even though he only played 10 games last year. He's been a bit quiet through 2 games this year, but I guarantee you he's going to get his chances on Sunday night. In fact, he was open for a red zone touchdown against the Eagles, but Cousins didn't see him, so he could easily have 2 touchdowns on the season already. For me, a huge key in this game is simple. Stop Kyle Pitts, whatever it takes. He's not the only threat on Atlanta's offense either, as they have several playmakers ready to help Cousins out. I'll get into those players soon, along with how the Chiefs' offense can exploit Atlanta's defense and the latest injury report. First up, I'm picking lower on Mahomes' passing yards this week. Why? Atlanta's secondary is solid, but they're also allowing the sixth most rushing yards per game, so I think the Chiefs will find some momentum on the ground. Even though the running back situation is a bit uncertain, I expect Carson Steele and company to step up. That's why I'm taking the higher on Steele's 11 rushing attempts. He had 7 carries last week against the Bengals with Pacheco still in the mix. With Pacheco out, Steele should see more than 11 carries easily. Next, let's talk about Atlanta's red zone defense. They've only allowed a touchdown 28% of the time, which is tied for 5th best in the league. Meanwhile, the Chiefs are around 20th when it comes to scoring touchdowns in the red zone. That's why I'm betting on higher for Harrison Butker's 1.5 field goals. The Chiefs may need his leg to put points on the board if they can't convert in the red zone. I'm also hitting higher on Kyle Pitts' 382 receiving yards. The Chiefs have been giving up an average of 138 yards per game to tight ends. Yes, you read that right. Pitts could have a big day. Finally, give me a Chris Jones sack. After the NFL took away his half sack from last week, I think he's coming into this game motivated and ready to take down Cousins, who isn't exactly mobile, especially after recovering from his Achilles injury. Now, let's talk more about Atlanta's playmakers beyond Kyle Pitts. Their wide receiver room is pretty strong. Darnell Mooney was a great addition as their wide receiver too and had a solid game last week. Ray McLeod is another reliable option, and then there's former first-round pick Drake London, who scored the game-winning touchdown last week. Despite dealing with poor quarterback play last season, London almost had 1,000 receiving yards, so Trent McDuffie will definitely have his hands full. The good news for the Chiefs is that Jalen Watson, the team's CB2, is improving every week. Defensive backs coach Dave Merritt has praised his progress, and he had a good game last week, which is a positive sign for Kansas City's secondary. The Chiefs' safety group is looking strong too. Justin Reed did injure his hand last week, but it's not serious enough to keep him out of the game. He's ready to go, and Brian Cook will continue to rotate in. Shamari Connor has also been seeing more snaps in the slot, and we might even see Jaden Hicks getting some rotational work in as well. The Chiefs' safety room is looking solid, and I believe they'll be able to hold their own against the Falcons' passing game for a few reasons. First, if they can get to Kirk Cousins and disrupt his timing, it will really affect his performance. That's where defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo becomes crucial for a Chiefs victory. I expect him to send pressure from all angles to confuse Cousins and rattle him. While Cousins has historically handled pressure well, Spagnuolo is known for disguising his blitzes, making it harder for quarterbacks to read the defense. On the offensive side, the Falcons have a standout running back in Bijan Robinson, their 8th overall pick from last year. He nearly reached 1,500 total yards in his rookie season and is on pace to replicate that this year. He's also one of the top 5 receiving backs in the NFL right now, so he's another player the Chiefs need to keep an eye on. If Atlanta can establish a strong run game, it will open up their passing attack. Fortunately, Cousins isn't very mobile, which simplifies things a bit for the Chiefs. Despite their offensive weapons, the Falcons have struggled to score points, averaging just 16 points per game so far. Meanwhile, the Chiefs' defense is allowing about 22.5 points per game. Not ideal, but they've faced tough opponents like the Ravens and Bengals. Coach Spagnuolo mentioned he wants to see his defense force more third and longs by limiting yardage on first and second down, but that won't be easy with the talent Atlanta has in the backfield. Switching to the Chiefs' offense, they've been averaging 26.2 points per game, ranking 6th in the NFL. In this matchup, the Chiefs will likely need to score over 20 points to secure a win, especially against a solid Falcons defense. The Falcons have some untested areas in their defense, particularly in their secondary, which features one of the best safety duos in the league. Justin Simmons, a former Bronco, and Jesse Bates, a former Bengal. A.J. Terrell, now one of the highest-paid corners in the NFL, has struggled a bit but remains a solid player. Former Chief Mike Hughes is also playing well. However, they haven't faced a true passing threat yet, having been tested against quarterbacks like Justin Fields and the Eagles, who were missing A.J. Brown. This Sunday, the Chiefs will present a much bigger challenge for them compared to those previous games. And speaking of challenges, let's talk about Travis Kelce and how important he'll be in this matchup. The situation with Travis Kelce is going to be crucial for the Chiefs. With his presence, they may need to rely even more on their passing game. It'll be interesting to see how the Falcons plan to defend him. This could very well be a game where Kelce shines on the stat sheet. Although he only has a few catches for 39 yards right now, his impact goes beyond those numbers. Watching the coach's film reveals how much attention he draws from defenses. For instance, Rashee Rice's touchdown last week and some significant receptions from Justin Watson happened because defenders were focused on Kelce. There was even a big play that was called back due to a penalty last week. The Falcons' linebackers have struggled in coverage, making it tough for them to defend both Kelce and Rice in the middle of the field. They might try putting Justin Simmons on Kelce, but we'll see what they decide. The Chiefs also have Juju Smith-Schuster, who has been a bit quiet so far, but is starting to get more comfortable in the system. He's been with the team for a few weeks now, so expect him to become more involved. Plus, there's the reliable Justin Watson and the exciting Xavier Worthy. The Falcons may try to stack the box against the pass, which makes the Chiefs' run game crucial, even without Isaiah Pacheco, who's on IR. Head coach Andy Reid mentioned that newly signed running back Kareem Hunt has looked good in practice and is getting back into football shape. However, he won't be elevated for this Sunday's game, as Reid wants him to spend more time learning the system first. Makes sense, given he's only been with the team for a couple of days. This means Carson Steele will likely see a heavier workload, and Matt Nagy has expressed confidence in him. Samaje Perine will also see an increase in his role. Keon Ingram, a veteran who spent time with the Cardinals, has been signed from the practice squad to the active roster, but I believe Steele and Perine will handle most of the load initially. It's important to note that the Falcons' interior defensive line is much stronger than the Bengals' battered unit from last week. Running the ball may not be as easy without Pacheco, so I expect the Chiefs to rely on various extensions of the run game, such as screens, bubble screens, and quick passes. Jet sweeps could also play a role in keeping the Falcons guessing. At the same time, I hope the Chiefs can push the ball downfield. If they can demand respect in the passing game, it will open things up for the run game overall. Additionally, there are ongoing concerns about the left tackle position that will need to be addressed. I have some concerns about the left tackle position. Kingsley Suamadi struggled against Trey Hendrickson last week, and coach Andy Reid mentioned that both tackles, Wanya Morris and Kingsley, will be playing in this game. He said, "We'll see how it goes, but it's good to know they're both ready." Fortunately, the Falcons don't have a pass rusher like Hendrickson, who ranks among the top 6 or 8 in the league. However, Grady Jarrett is a strong player at 31 years old, and they recently traded for Matthew Judon from the Patriots, so that matchup will be worth watching. Kingsley or Wanya against Judon could be pivotal. On the bright side, the Falcons' defense is last in the league for pressure rate, which should give Patrick Mahomes a cleaner pocket to work with. Even when the pocket breaks down, Mahomes is exceptional at extending plays, possibly the best in the league at doing so. We'll see if Atlanta's secondary can handle those scramble drills, especially if their pass rush fails to reach him. Overall, it's going to be an intriguing game. The Chiefs are favored by most to win, and while I know I'm biased, I believe they'll come out on top with a score of 24-17. Much respect to the Falcons, though. After their win against Philly last week, a victory against the back-to-back Super Bowl champions would send a strong message that they are real contenders in the NFC. Before I wrap up, I want to take a look at the final injury reports for both teams. Luckily, the injury report looks pretty good for everyone involved. Many teams around the league are struggling with injuries, but both of these squads are in decent shape. Mike Dana has a quad issue, Nazy Johnson has a hamstring issue, and Derek Nottie is dealing with a triceps injury. Mike Pennell and Xavier Worthy have some minor injuries as well, but all these players participated fully in practice this week and have no questionable or doubtful designations. They're all set to play. On the Falcons side, Tyler Allgeier, one of their running backs, has been upgraded from limited to full participation with a hip issue. The same goes for James Smith-Williams, Taquan Graham, Grady Jarrett, who had a rest day, Antonio Hamilton, David Anama, and Jake Matthews. They're all ready to go. Both teams are looking pretty healthy overall. I think Carson Steele will get a solid opportunity to shine, and I don't expect him to be overshadowed by Keon Ingram in terms of carries. If that were the case, Ingram would likely be on the main roster instead of Steele. Let me know your thoughts on how you think Carson Steele will perform and your predictions for the game. Until next time, let's go.